Let's bring in our federal trial attorney analyst who is standing by. Alexis Rosenberg has been watching this change of plea hearing. Still so many questions, Alexis, after we have had this hearing. Do you think anything more will come from sentencing?
Well, I don't think that we're going to necessarily get any more details. And that's one of the things when someone takes a plea, you don't hear all the evidence that they potentially had. And I do think this was the best thing that could have happened. He's been sentenced to 4 life sentences. He's not going to get out. But the family seems to be rather upset. They really wanted to go forward with trying to get the death penalty.
Yeah, they really did. And they've been very vocal about their distrust of the system, really, they've had some harsh words for not only the judge, but the prosecutor involved in not going forward with the death penalty. The judge made it clear that his court does not have anything to do with whether or not the prosecution goes forward with a death penalty or trying a case as a death penalty case, and that he was there to essentially make sure that this offer was legit. What are some situations where a judge could impede on a plea offer, if ever?
Well, I mean, they can, but not with the death penalty. And so that's kind of an animal on its own. But I mean, the bottom line is that he could have been convicted, and then on the death penalty phase, they could have found that they weren't going to sentence him to death, as well as he could have been sentenced to death, and then ultimately on appeal, it came back down and he was sentenced to life too. So it's very risky, trying somebody on death penalty, and it's very, it's time consuming, and as well as all the things involved in that. So I mean, although the family may not agree with this at this point, ultimately I think that they're going to come to terms with it.
There may be people who are asking, and I hate to put you on the spot on this, Alexis, in terms of death penalty cases, because there are those who are qualified with the death penalty. They handle these cases all of the time. But if the death penalty exists in Idaho, regardless of how people feel about capital punishment in that state, it is the law of the land there. So it almost begs the question of, if not for this person who in cold blood hunted and killed 4 college students inside of their home as they slept for no reason that we can see, no provocation in any way, who else would be someone who would be on death row in this case?
Well, I mean, listen, we had this, that question can also be asked about the Parkland murderer. I mean, you would think
they did seek the death penalty on and were unable to get a conviction on that. Well, they didn't get the death penalty. They got a sentence of life in prison, but continue.
Well, so my point with that was exactly what you said. They ended up seeking the death penalty, and they went and they got a conviction. And then on the death penalty phase, it turned out that he ultimately was sentenced, to life in prison. So, I mean, going through this is costly and expensive, and there's no guarantee that he was going to be, sentenced to the death penalty to start with. Also, it takes a really long time on appeals. So even if they're sentenced, it could be 20-30 years that we're talking about before that even happens, and a lot can change in that time.
Alexis, we are waiting to see if anyone is going to be speaking outside of that courthouse in Boise, Idaho, so I may have to cut you off if someone does approach the podium and start talking. But let's talk about sentencing, because before we went to break, Matt Johnson was talking about what is going to be anticipated as sentencing. Of course, the victim impact statements, but he was wondering about whether or not we'll learn any more details at sentencing. I think we talked about this earlier, but what do you usually anticipate happening at sentencing? And if there's no wiggle room for the judge, is there any reason for Bryan Kohberger to allocute in front of everyone?
No, there's no reason for him to get up unless he wants to give some sort of statement to the victims. So I don't know if he's going to get up. Like you mentioned before, he's kind of very stoic, and he wasn't really showing much emotions. But, the real purpose at this point is obviously for procedural reasons, but also to give those victims their time to express themselves and give those statements. I mean, this is a horrible, needless, act that was done on their children, and to give them that opportunity to be heard. This isn't a mini trial of the trial. It's really going to focus on the statements and focus on the issues related from a procedural standpoint, so that that sentencing isn't necessarily thrown out and they meet all the, necessary requirements.
Alexis, you can't pick up on much from him in just these short sentences. But, I was inside of the courtroom back in 2023 when he was first arrested in Pennsylvania. Inside the courtroom, I was sitting behind his family, and it was the same tenor in his voice, just very matter of fact. He didn't look overly concerned after he had been picked up after being on the run and evading police for over a month. And I don't know what we wanted from him or wanted to hear from him in this moment. And if you're a family member, there's got to be something that you want to hear, and likely they didn't get today. But your thoughts on just your impression of him?
Chilling. I mean, it's just chilling. It's like you're looking in the face of a monster. I mean, he's responding to these murders as if you're asking him if he would like sugar in his latte. I mean, it's chilling. The vacant eyes, the no emotion. I mean, I think what the victims would like is some sign of remorse, some insight into why did you do this? And I don't think they're going to get it. I mean, I think we're looking at the face of a monster. There's no emotion here. It's vacant that we're seeing. It's very chilling.
Alexis, there's so many reasons that people want answers, not just, to know the gory details of what happened, but it helps in some way society when you understand how could this perhaps have been prevented, what went into this, what could have been picked up on from Bryan Kohberger in all of his movements, and whether or not there's anything else to be concerned with in his past. What are your thoughts on just this cliffhanger of not knowing why when we're at this juncture?
I mean, first, speaking about the victim who just spoke, one of the things that's taken in consideration when there's a plea is the victims. It's what the victims want. But another thing we have to take, and we kind of touched upon this, Matt touched upon it, we don't know what the case was. We don't really know how strong the case that the prosecution had. They may have had holes in there that we're not aware of, that they were having concerns. And that may be one of the reasons for this plea. But we're not going to get those specifics. And a lot of times, even with the trial, the victims don't necessarily get the answers that they're really seeking, even with a full-blown trial.